Well, that was anticlimactic. Another L in the books for the Sharks, losing this one to the Anaheim Ducks 5-2. Like we teased out on the Twitter, new duo incoming. All that and more on this edition of Teal Town After Dark. But first, if you want to be a part of the show and Teal together and interact with us, check us out across all of the social media platforms, that being Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, Reddit, and all of the shenanigans that go down in the Discord. We got all that and more at tealtownusa.com. I am pleased to be joined by Ryan, or as you might know on Twitter, at Hockey from 808. Ryan, it is a pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure as well.
And first, let me just get your quick, broad thoughts on this game tonight. Kind of rough.
It was a game. Didn't expect much coming into it. Thought we looked all right, but we're all just waiting for it to end.
Yeah, we're in the death knells, right? You've got the outcome already sealed in fate, and now I guess we can only really revel in that silver lining that the Vegas Golden Knights might be joining us in our misery. So that's, I guess, somewhat of a win for me.
That would be lovely.
This season. Ah, boy. Where do we even get to start on this one? If we take a look at that first period, we've got a pretty large and disparaging shot counter in favor of the Sharks, 17-7. However, it would be Anaheim that would open the scoring at 4:05 in the first on the power play. The PK, which had been a staple of the team, is starting to take some water on, and the Ducks would also score what looked like a 2-0 goal. However, it was called back, and the score would remain 1-0 through that period. What did you see in the first period? Because those shots seemed semi-dangerous at times, but then at other times it just seemed kind of didn't really have a good idea of what they wanted to do with the puck.
Yeah, to start off the game, you thought, all right, this is going to be a hot game. Everything looked all right, and the Balsers, Borderlo-Gregor line was buzzing. They're pretty much the only line, but before the Zegras goal, that was producing anything. Balsers early on off the post, but then once that goal, who knew it even was a goal? Once that goal went in, and that's when it started to go a little bit downhill from there.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Sharks just really didn't get it into gear, until the latter part of that second period. And going into that second period, unfortunately, you want the Sharks to kind of push back a little bit, but Max Comtois with his 5th on the season from Shattenkirk and Benoit, 5:26 into the second period. And then this is about the time where I started to say, I'm going to put this on mute, and let's unmute the baseball game while I'm doing picture-in-picture, because I don't need to be listening to some more poor play. This one, busted 2-on-1 coverage. You had Merckx just kind of a little bit,
just a little lost
out there. And unfortunately, the Sharks just really didn't recover after that, because, 6:22. I think it was probably a shift and a half later, you had Sonny Milano, his 14th on the season, Terry and Simone with the assist there. They would end up victimizing the Burns-Ferraro pairing. So it just seemed like all the defensive pairings just had a brain fart and meltdown in their own zone this evening.
Yeah, it didn't look great. Like you said, Merkley just, he had his man, lost his man, and just kind of forgot he was there. And then the Milano goal, great goal, but you're just giving him about a radius of 3 feet of nobody on him. So that doesn't help. And then, like you said, that the defensive pairings, didn't really matter who you threw out there. It didn't look pretty at all.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think when the Sharks do play like this and do excuse me, just had a burp. No, but I mean when the Sharks even burp it up on the ice, right, and not really composing themselves, and then they get down in a score like this, 3-0, then they start to kind of press a little bit, and the Sharks would press back, and it would be good to see Brent Burns get his 10th on the power play. Logan Couture and Boards get the assist there. That does come on the power play, so I mean,
Finally.
yeah. I mean, there's not really much to say at this point. The power play is what it is, and it's just one of those rare occurrence power play goals. But he just gets it in off the wrister. Kind of pulls Kahkonen a little bit out of the crease, and or excuse me, not Kahkonen. Oh my goodness, where am I going with that one? Excuse me, Stolarz. I'm just thinking of another big goaltender. That's all. Stolarz there with getting him off the line, and then is able to tuck that home. So Brent Burns, makes it interesting, gets the Sharks on the board. Scott Reedy would follow up 3 minutes later with his 6th on the season. Magna and Chmielewski getting the assist there. And I did want to bring up, first we can go over the Brent Burns goal and what you saw from the power play. I mean, we did kind of just say, what it is at this point. But what do you think going forward the Sharks need to do to continue the power play success?
I mean, power play success, at least have over a minute in the opponents in the offensive zone. I feel like all the time on the power play, we're just watching them dump and chase over and over again. And then on the Burns goal, it was one of the rare times that they're actually moving the puck around. I think it was deflected on in right in front of Stolarz. But, on the power play, it's like they've tried so many things on the power play and nothing seems to stick. You see guys start on the first unit, and then later in the game, they're on the second unit. At this point, maybe they need another power play coach. Some other idea, split up Carlson is hurt, but split them up. But, it's one of Burns's bright spots, but also, like, one of his downfalls is I feel like every time on that first unit, as soon as he gets the puck on the point, it's off his stick in a matter of a second. And then that second unit comes in, you see a little bit more fluidity, and it's like two different games going on between the two units. And then Reedy goal.
Yeah, on the Reedy goal, I did want to just kind of get your opinion first on Reedy himself as a player, because this is the first time I've had the pleasure to host with you on board. So
yeah,
what are your thoughts on Reedy as a player? He was one of the bright spots on the Barracuda, scoring the way he did, and a guy that we've had third line, types of aspirations for. Where do you see he's at in his development, and do you think he's going to cash in on, continue to cash in on, some solid foundational play in front of the net?
Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to touch on. And for his goal, he just stuck himself right there, and I feel like whenever he's on the ice, he's very great positionally. He's always finding great spots. Bright spot on the year, both with the Sharks and the Barracuda, being one of the top scorers down there, but then with very limited ice time, I feel like whenever he's on the ice, you see more good than bad. You would like to see him get a little bit more of a look, but I think at this point it's kind of hard to get him into that top six. Even the third line, especially the third line now. But when he's out there, it's a joy to watch him. I feel like with Sasha, at least, those two on that fourth line are starting to find something, and a lot of nights I feel like that fourth and third line are the more enjoyable ones to watch rather than some other lines.
he's just kind of got that pit bull mentality, right? He just gets in. He's not afraid to, have the size mismatch. I like where he keeps his stick on the ice for most of the action. It seems like he's got really good hand-eye coordination as well. And maybe he can, take some lessons from the Joe Pavelski school of tipping, but he seems like he's kind of one of those kind of Swiss Army knife players, and I'm going to be very interested to see what kind of ceiling he has, and I know floor wise the Sharks have always been, within the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, this narrative has changed, but have always looked for high ceiling guy or high floor guys. That way, they at least extract something of value, and I think that Scott Reedy, I think at the at the very least is going to be a utility player, and I think maybe you might have a diamond in the rough there, but we'll continue to see. But going into that third period, unfortunately, the Sharks would just not be able to get the equalizing goal, and in fact, Josh Mahura would get his third on the season. Milano and Comtois with the assist there, and that was really the dagger. They had a couple of shifts really pinning Anaheim in their own zone, 2 posts within the same sequence, and they were doing everything but score. But after that score by Mahura, they packed it in at that point. What'd you see on this one? And because I think this one to me was the one where I say Kahkonen's got to have that.
Yeah, you look at it. I mean, his glove is there. It's a one-on-one matchup. It's one you definitely like to see him save and at least keep the Sharks in the game. Like you mentioned, I mean, right before that, the 2 posts, it looked like something was going to fall for them. Had some no calls, in my opinion, some questionable ones. And then once they kind of lost the puck and Mahura went down the ice, and I mean, looked like a great shot, but it's definitely one that you want to see Comtois at least, or not Comtois, Kahkonen at least get a glove on at least. But you just got beat. I mean, there's really nothing to it. But and like you said, once that one fell, it seemed like the Sharks were just trying to force too many things, and then it kind of just fell apart from there.
Yeah. Yeah, would also have a fight in that third period. Jonah Gadjevich and Hunter Drew going at it. It was really good to see Gadjevich step in for Noah Gregor there. He gets ridden into the boards a little high. I think what was bothering him most was the stick had come up, kind of more of a cross check into the boards. And it was good to see Gaddy, step up and take on the perpetrator. You like to see that, and you like to see it especially in the end of the season because the shows at least the guys still have each other's backs. But I mean, other than that, nothing really of note there. You have the empty netter from Zach Aston-Reese, his 5th on the season, and Stolars would get his first assist of the season, so that's kind of cool. Comes at 19-18, and that would be your game.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, I thought he was going to go for it. I mean, I think he tried to. Kind of missed it there. But, yeah, end of the game, I mean, once I saw Gadjevich was in the lineup, you had a feeling something was coming. It was, I think, Gregor kind of was a little bit lower, but where Drew kind of hit him, it was a little bit high right in the numbers.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as we've seen, Gregor can stand his own, and I at first thought that Gregor was going to be the one thrown down. But Gadjevich was right there to take him on, so it looked like a fight, not a mismatch. So, I mean, it was nice to see that. But yeah, like you had mentioned, really at the end of the game, there wasn't much to see. It wasn't much to be really excited for there.
Yeah, and it's kind of unfortunate because there was a good crowd on hand, and I felt you had some chance going. I felt that there was some good energy in the tank, especially for late in the season, the way that it was, and it's really unfortunate that the Sharks just couldn't pull out. Couldn't pull out a better effort, I guess, and that's to me, collectively, they just look like a bunch of guys skating on the pond or whatever, playing, shinny hockey, and the score was going to be what it was going to be, basically. And that's kind of how I felt. This game kind of went down, but the shots on goal would be 31-33 in favor of the Sharks. You've got the face-off percentage at 48% for the Sharks. They go 1 for 3 on the power play. The Ducks go 1 for 2. The hits would be 21-20 in favor of the Ducks. Blocks would be 18-13 in favor of the Sharks. The Sharks with 12 giveaways and the Ducks with 7 giveaways tonight. Kahkonen would go 26 of 30 for 867. Like I had said, there were a couple in there that really just, I think that there were one definitely needed to be saved, and I think you could make an argument for another. However, that's just when you got a team that's kind of just mentally checked out at this point. I think you get games like these. What do they call it? It's like the Simpsons in the later seasons, right? Zombie Simpsons. It's just zombie Sharks.
They're just going.
Yeah, they've got their vacations all planned out, and they've got the off seasons ready to roll.
Yeah,
got to hit that green.
Yeah, you could tell the young guys are the guys that are actually out there fighting for some chance, but you could see some guys are just done, checked out, ready just to get this year over with already.
Yeah, and Denver Doyle, a little bit farther up in the chat, talking about the power play and what's best for the power play, and I guess kind of we'll go a little bit more into the structurally now, because like I said, it's the first time I've had a chance to sit down and have a conversation with you about the state of the team and kind of where we're going, what's the outlook look like for you, and what. You've got a massive hole at the head of the organization, and how do you go about filling that? So, Ryan, I guess first take is, who do you like for this GM position? What are you looking for as a fan? Want to at least see qualities in a new GM, and what kind of vision do you want for the team with this GM?
I think personally, I don't really have a preference for who. I feel like Sharks keep a lot of things pretty close knit. You don't really get a lot of leaks out of this team. But as a fan, I kind of want to see something new. There's the coaching carousel. Everyone talks about that these guys just get rotated. Kind of want to see someone who, obviously with this team, you need to have a clear vision with it, whether that's you're really going to go for it, which I think you have to do, but how they're going to go about it, I would like to see some guys moved on from, just to bring in some new faces, new energy. I think that's definitely needed. This team has kind of been the same. Granted, some pieces have gone, but there's still a lot of the same guys around. And just someone who knows that they're going to stick to their guns, not listen to the outside noise. And if they want to pull off a sneaky move or two, I wouldn't be mad about it. But
just to kind of reiterate and kind of bounce off a little bit on it, your feeling is you kind of want somebody who's, let's say, assertive, kind of has a little bit of a vision for the team, wants to kind of put some roots down, but not necessarily rock the boat so much that, you're changing the entire direction of where you want to go. And it sounds like you want this guy to be somewhat media savvy, but maybe more along the lines of doing kind of things, continue to be in the background and kind of work like with the shadow rosters and things like that that Doug Wilson had, where really things were kept really quiet and really didn't know what the Sharks would do year to year, trade deadline to deadline, or draft to draft. So I feel that that's kind of what you're looking for. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Just getting into it a little bit more. I mean, it would be nice to hear some things. It's kind of been hard the past. I mean, of recent lately, not really knowing what the Sharks are looking for, maybe what they have in mind. That makes it a little hard. And like you said, someone who's media savvy, knows how to talk to the media, can drop a few hints here or there. But definitely someone who isn't afraid to bring in his guys. I think this team might need that. With I mean the coaching staff being a big part of that. Um, Even if he has like his guy, if it's someone who he feels comfortable with. I mean, I think even um, down at the CUDA, I think that might need some turnaround as well, especially with the guys coming in. I wouldn't wouldn't be pressed if we saw some things change.
Yeah, and I like this comment from Denver Doyle. Concerned that the reports are that Bugner's job is safe no matter who the new GM is. Shouldn't the GM pick the coach? I agree wholeheartedly on that, and I do feel that a GM wants to bring in his guy, but I also think about the fact that the Sharks are paying Bob Bugner. They're I wouldn't say that they're a frugal team, but I would say that they're not a team that just spends money to spend money. And I feel that if you're going to do both a buyout and a coach out, coach buyout and a
Hmm.
player buyout, that that's going to be a lot of real money that Hasselplattner's got to stroke.
Hmm.
Just the checks that he's got to stroke for people not working, and I'm concerned that the money or the financials regarding salaries and player movement and all of that. I'm concerned that there's going to be some hindrance from making decisions because of money.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's hard too with Bugner being on one more year left on his deal. Um, I think if he had a little bit more term, it's kind of one where the new GM comes in, evaluates things, sees if he really wants to stick it out with Bugner, um, or you buy it out just and then you just got to eat it for now. But I think him just having 1 year left, it's like, are we okay with another year of Bob, and then we can go ahead and then kind of start things. Um, which I mean, as much as I don't want Bob to stay, I understand that aspect of it and the thinking there. Um, that way, you just run his contract down, and then you can evaluate the market, see what's out there, and then start to build from there.
what are your thoughts on some of the unconventional guys that the Sharks are looking at? Um, Kevin Weeks was a name that was, excuse me, floated around, and then there was another one that there was another name that was floating around. I think John Ferguson Jr. And some guys that maybe are not within the good old Sharks connected alumni, you know, kind of hires and are more outside out of the box thinkers. I mean, would you want a media analysis guy running this team? Do you think that he's got the chops to do that?
I think it's the Kevin Weeks story was an interesting one to see because, like you said, he's more of a media guy, and you don't really know what he has when it comes to running a team or what sort of experience that he brings. I think it is interesting on the fact that it's a media guy, sort of the complete opposite of what Doug was. Um, but you got to wonder how how much truth there is to that rumor, or if it's some speculation. But I like I like that it's true. They're sticking to the fact, like when when Becker was mentioning that it is going to be an external search. I do like that. I mean, the one leak or rumor that we have had is someone who is pretty external, and I mean, I wouldn't mind if it's someone from a juniors team or just someone you don't expect. But I think the Ferguson one, I mean, as long as he doesn't make a trade like he has been a part of before, I wouldn't mind. Um, but I think that's another one where, I mean, Arizona is Arizona. Um, I don't know if that's the tree I want to pluck my next GM from.
Well, here's the thing, and I like Kevin Weeks because he doesn't he's one, he's a guy that has played the game, right? So that's always going to be a plus. Two, I think he's got some really good charisma, could kind of, you know, be very media savvy. I think he could even, if he really wanted to, could beef up the media savvy portion of the Sharks and could be an asset there. Um, with Weeks, I worry about not knowing the intricacies of being a GM and understanding more along the lines of cap or those minutiae of trade, trade deals and trade, um, nuances that you can add during the deadline that will net
Hmm.
you extra picks, like being a cap broker, if you wanna call it that. So there's all these there are all these externalities that I don't know that he's been exposed to yet. And I almost look at it like the John Lynch hiring over in San Francisco for the 49ers. It's unconventional. The jury's still out on whether or not it's worked.
Hmm.
And we've seen more and more middling play, so to speak. And I think if you really want the team to compete and push forward, I think you got to get a guy that's gonna not have the shackles be tied to him. You got to have somebody that can implement a vision that can then be executed on the ice.
Yeah, and I think touching on the Weeks thing, he could um, bring in people around him. Um, I know there's certain teams that have guys who are um, that's like their job is to work with the cap and what the team can do with the cap, save here, save there, and then when it comes around to the trade deadline, what moves they can make to be competitive and then stay cap compliant, which the Sharks, with the contracts they have, are probably going to need to do if they're looking to go out there and compete. I mean, the guys you probably got to bring in will definitely bring you to the cap ceiling. And then, I mean, the Sharks haven't used it very often of recent, but probably some LTIR if that's the route that they want to take. But it really all just depends. And kind of like, I mean, I see what Dana says here, that who knows what we know. He could know those things. It's a very big question mark with him.
Yeah, and I don't think we're saying I don't think that we're saying that he's not able to do it, or he's not doesn't have the knowledge, so to speak. I don't think that I I don't know what his background is within Sharks, excuse me, within hockey operations, right? And and
Hmm.
and I'd like to see some experience there, at least having a taste of some kind of front office experience. So for me, that's kind of what I look at, and I like to draw other comparisons to sports, and especially because the Bay Area has some really good sports to look to, and I look at what's worked for other sports franchises, and I think new ideas and fresh perspectives have really started to take root, and an embrace of non-traditional thinking on the ice, or on whatever your on-field product is,
Hmm.
and looking for those diamonds in the rough, looking for those guys that have been passed over. And I look at a guy like Yanni Gourde, for instance, right? I mean, he was part of the Sharks organization and then, wasn't re-signed, retained, and ends up, lighting up, and becoming, a great player for Tampa Bay. So to me, that's the kind of guy that I look for, is one of those statistician nerds, one of those hockey lifers, but who's also got a great perspective and a new perspective, not afraid of the analytics, but also utilizes their eyes and can see a player's effort or a player's the non-tangibles.
Yeah, I mean, the value that you don't just see while you're watching the game, and it's what else they can bring in. Like you had mentioned about, I mean, referencing other sports, the Giants are kind of getting the rewards of plucking from a successful team, which I also could see the Sharks doing with pulling someone from a Tampa or a team that has built a good team and can sustain, and then sort of someone who maybe wants to step out there and take the reins on themselves.
Yeah, I think the Sharks traditionally have brought in cup winners in a supporting cast kind of way. And I don't think that they've ever had an alpha or a top dog that's knows what it has taken to win the cup. Now, Couture has gotten to a cup final before, and that does, count for a lot. However, you just don't have that one alpha male that can say, look, this is how we did it, X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it requires and what kind of sacrifices that you need to make. And I'm not sure that player has emerged yet for the Sharks insofar as the next level leadership. I mean, I think we had that player, and I think everybody, can kind of read between the lines there. Quickly, AJ is going to crawl out of the woodwork. But yeah, I think that there are players that have the tools to do it, but I don't think have really seized the opportunity yet. What do you take from the leadership, and how are you feeling? Just kind of like your best players kind of need to be your best players on a nightly basis, and we haven't seen that this season.
Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of saw things turn around, bringing in Bonino, his experience, and then also Cogs, while he was here. His experience, I think, helped steady the ship after the whole storyline this summer. But it could just be hearing from the same people. And then you also, I mean, Couture's been captain for a couple seasons now, and I feel like we still don't know his style of leadership. So you got to wonder who's the voice in that locker room. If it is Couture, and then we just don't see it on the ice, or if it's someone else. But yeah, like you had mentioned, they don't really have anyone that's been there and done it. And then you were sort of seeing the same faces. I would like to see it, maybe a shakeup of the alternates, maybe not having as many. So I know Sharks are one of the few teams that do have 4 A's.
Yeah, the rotating A. Yeah, that last A is rotating.
Yeah, so I think maybe you got to decide on who's going to be your A's and sort of stick with that, because you got to wonder if it's just, at this point, is it a reward for guys, or like are they actually leaders, like in the locker room and just on the ice, or like the players who have it are deserving, but again, it's just a matter of like what's really going on, and then like where's the leadership coming from.
And Dana bringing up a great point that Benito has a cup, and also she said, "OMG, not alphas." When I talk about alphas, and when I'm talking about players getting a cup, I'm talking about a Jonathan Taves or a Sidney Crosby or a Braden Point, but basically somebody who's been there and who is of a higher caliber that can say, look, I play at an elite level, have won the big shiny silver thing. I know how to get it done. And someone like Erik Karlsson, who's a veteran in this league, can look at and be like, damn, if he's going to do that, then I need to step up my game. Right? It seems like there isn't enough accountability into consistency, or at least bringing it all the time, full bore to the pedal to the metal, excuse me, full bore, and we're not seeing that consistent. And I think, one, it's hard to do that when you don't have the talent, because I think, again, you look at the gape, the big gaping hole on the wings for the Sharks, and you go, that is part of the problem for sure. But it's also a player like Erik Karlsson checking out at times, a player like Brent Burns making defensively boneheaded mistakes. And that's what I'm talking about. It's just those finer points that we're just not seeing the team execute on this season.
Yeah, and I think to follow up on that, I feel like when things do go bad and then you start to see guys take off, it's always the top guys who you see their play drop the fastest. Things aren't going well. Like you mentioned, you see the Karlsson taking a play off. You could see Burns playing frustrated. You don't see sometimes a Hurdle or a Couture. They kind of they're not as prevalent as they should be. And then, I mean, Meyer's still your top guy. And then you could tell when he gets frustrated and just starts shooting from pretty much everywhere. But I mean, even to touch on, like, for Burns, I mean, you see his defensive mistakes, but then also his offensive mistakes that lead to defensive deficiencies,
or he cheats his defense for offense and then gets burned on it.
Yeah, and then it looks bad on someone else when, I mean, it could have been avoided. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a great thing to have, but sometimes when he gets the puck at the point and then he just fires it, just to fire it. I mean, you don't have a Pavelski in the front of the net anymore. You have guys who can maybe do it here and there, but you don't have someone who is known for that. And I know on a couple nights, I mean, even tonight, where he'll get the puck and just fire it, it'll go into someone or it'll get blocked, and then all of a sudden now it's behind Burns, and then his D partner is left with, they have to leave the guy that was on him, and now it's a 2-on-1 going the other way. And just sort of things like that is hard to see, especially when it's your top guys that it's coming from, and those are the guys who, the younger guys, and there's a lot of them on this team, are supposed to look towards.
Well, yeah, and I think Ramirez brings up another guy too, Pickles, right, for that matter. And so I'm concerned now that you've got a guy in Ryan Merkley who is impressionable, I think, and I think he's still learning how to be a pro, and he's seeing a Brent Burns. He's not seeing Brent Burns in his prime, right? This is Twilight Brent Burns. This is where he cheats his defensive positioning for offense. Makes more high risk and lower reward type plays. Sees Erik Karlsson gliding to the bench, and so I wonder and worry about a kid coming up in that kind of environment, right? And you just look at a guy like excuse me, Sergachev over in Tampa Bay, and look at a guy like Victor Hedman who's teaching him how to play, and you have that in Erik Karlsson, right? I mean, Erik Karlsson and Victor Hedman at one time were talked about in the same breath, and look at how far from grace he's fallen, and it's just a shame, because I think part of the problem is there were certain players that more was expected than they brought last year, and didn't answer that in my opinion. And for me, I think they've kind of skated on that for the last couple of years. Pardon the pun. Skated off and really been consequence free, and I think that needs to change, especially for the higher paid players.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when, like you touched on for Merkley, one thing I don't want him to pick up, like Felix mentioned, is Burns' starfish. We don't want to see that anymore. But definitely when you have two other top offensive guys and then someone in Merkley who, barring other reasons, was a top defensive prospect when he was drafted. And then, I mean, when he was drafted, it's like, all right, cool. Like he has these guys to look up to, but now it's like, do you really want him to be following their footsteps? Just seeing how they're playing and their attitude and what they're doing, and how a lot of times they will put their offense ahead of their defense. We just have to see. I mean, Merkley has his flashes, but then again, on defense, when he makes a mistake, most of the time
It's in the back of his net.
Yeah, it's one that leads to a goal, or it's one that's very, very noticeable.
Right. So with the little time that we have remaining here, Ryan, I'd like to ask you, if you're Sharks GM, I'll give you 3 moves that you can make on the roster. What are you doing?
Adding or subtracting?
Yeah, you got 3 moves. You do what you want to do with those 3 moves. What are you addressing in the offseason?
Defense, and I mean, just to touch on that, I mean, the third one, still got to think about that, but I feel like definitely you got to look at Burns, trading Burns, run the numbers on a Vlasic buyout. I think those are the top 2 things. I mean, Burns has his value. I mean, he's over 50 points, almost, I think, at 60 again. But it's like, do you want to wait until the very end and then you're stuck with him? Or do you want to at least try and get something, and move that $8 million and try and use it more efficiently and more effectively? So I think I would touch on that and sort of take calls, but also call teams on Burns. And then, like I mentioned, number 2, probably run the numbers on a Vlasic buyout, see what he's thinking. I mean, yeah, he's been here since he was drafted. He has the longevity, but just watching him on the ice, it's not a product that
Just
is
doesn't
nice
have it.
to see.
He just doesn't have it anymore.
If anyone has dropped off fast and more noticeably than him, then I would like to see, because it's bad. So I think even kind of like how Minnesota did buying out their long-term contract guys, I think you have to maybe stomach the high dead cap numbers to bring in other guys.
I mean,
just
Minnesota's going to be in cap hell next year, and it's just you look at that Vlasic buyout and you go, man, do you really want to hire a new GM, buy out a guy, and potentially have to retain salary on a trade? That's a lot of money you're not paying guys to be on your team. So again, I wonder where the financials come in on those, but I think that those are all great ideas, and I think, for me, if I want to fill in your number 3 for you, I'd look for a good winger at this point. I think you've got the centers pretty much identified, but I'd like to have one more impact winger for Couture. It just seems like he has rotated through winger after winger after winger, not being able to get a good solid duo with someone out there. And I think that his play has suffered because of it.
Yeah, I think that's where I probably was going to go. I mean, the way Bordelow's been playing, I don't mind him filling that 3C role. And I mean, if a new GM comes in or a new coach, I mean, I don't think you can logically be running Bonino as a top six kind of guy. Even at this point, I think it's better to get the young guys rolling. And I mean, if even trading a Bonino, um, as much leadership as he brings, I think the Sharks have too many guys who are similar,
Yeah.
which sort of makes the queue longer for other guys. And I mean, they just had a winger heavy draft, but those guys probably won't be ready. And I mean, um, like if you just mock up the forwards for next year, like it's already full. Like there's guys who are having good seasons now, like a Reedy, who you have a hard time plugging in with Bonino and Nieto even on the roster. And like you could put a like Eklund. I mean, we all see what he's gonna be. You put him with Couture, but it's kind of like who do you put on the other side? Do you try out a Dolan again with a new staff if there is one? Do you bring in someone more experienced? Because like you had mentioned, he's had his times with Timo, but once Timo and Hurdle sort of found their link up together, Couture was kind of left out on an island by himself. But it's going to be nice to see Eklund come in. You hope he's stuck directly on Couture's wing. Hopefully the Barabanov extension comes and then that line can just stay together. But we have too many guys, which I could see lead to maybe a trade, kind of all in one. You have a Balsers, Gregor, I mean Reedy, you have a Weatherby, those kind of guys who I think you have 6 spots in the bottom 6, and it's a thing of do you want to go full youth, which it would be if you keep everyone, or are you gonna keep your old guys, but then you have guys who proven that they can hold it in the NHL with the little ice time they can, but do you want to keep them in the AHL and possibly stunt their growth?
Yeah, and I wonder, I wonder who or what kind of player would be able to help rejuvenate Couture. Is it another crafty kind of player? Is it another skills type player, or is it another big body?
Hmm.
And at this point, I'm not sure what he needs to thrive. I don't know if he needs somebody feeding him the puck more, or if it's someone that he can get the puck to. But it just seems like he's more of a play enabler and not a finisher. I mean, he can finish,
Yeah,
but
those. Oh no,
just
sorry.
I think you need some guys with some finish,
Hmm.
and that's where I'm getting at is you we've got a lot of, he could, if he just, develops into this player, then he's going to be a goal scorer, or, he's got this potential. But there's nobody that's actually done it yet. There's nobody
Hmm.
that's actually hit that critical mass point yet. And so for me, if you go out and get one veteran winger, one impact veteran winger, then you can start messing around with that other side of Couture's wing. And then get a little bit more confidence that the player that you put there is going to develop better.
Yeah, because like especially with Eklund, we've seen he's more of a pass first winger. He's not your scoring winger. And then I mean a prime example of Couture tonight. I feel like a lot of times in the offensive zone, you look at Couture and he's by himself, and then you see Bonino and Nieto like just entering, just crossing the blue line, and then Couture has no options across the ice or near him, and then he shoots it. Granted, his shooting could be a lot better. A lot of times tonight, I think he had 3 shots from that right side on Stolars, and um, all 3 of them were hit him center mass, and it's like, Bud, what are you doing? Like, there's above him, the side of him, and I don't know if that's from him just looking for a rebound maybe, or if he's just feeling stuck, but his finishing is is not what it used to be.
Yeah, I mean
Because
this season we take a look at his stats. I mean he had a pretty big decline, and I think one it's hard to get your cookies when there's not a lot of cookies being got by everybody
yeah,
else, right? So that's part of the problem is just general scoring around the Sharks is lower. But I also think it has to directly correlates with the fact that he's not had a stable partner with him the whole season. So it'll be interesting to see where the Sharks end up going. And hopefully the talent disparity can be, that equation can be balanced a little bit more between, the forwards and the defense. But again, it's going to be a lot of movement. It's going to be a lot of I think there's going to be some hardship and there's going to be some hard decisions that are going to have to be made coming up.
definitely.
Well, Ryan, we're at that point. So, what are your final thoughts on this evening's game? Where the people can find you, what you're doing these days?
Yeah, I think we all watched a game, like I had said. It was a rough one, but we're all just trying to find the little things that we could be happy about. I'm hoping we see a borderline goal before we finish the year. That would be a nice thing to finish the year off with, how things have been going. Pretty much the only thing that has me watching a Sharks game now. But to end that, you can find me on Twitter at hockeyfrom808, screaming and complaining about things and showing my love to certain players. That was very obvious. But yeah, I mean, if you don't like it, that's okay. We all have our favorites.
What do they say? Opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one, and they all stink. Well, I think it's something like that. But no, if you want to check out me and where to find me, use my first name. That's ERIKLAN, and my last name Landy, LANDI, across all the social media garbage. For me, final thoughts are tank, baby. Tank. In case you missed us and you want to check us out again, check us out across all the podcasting platforms, that being Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, the YouTube Rewind, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. We are across all of those platforms. I think we're even on Audible now. All that and more at tealtownusa.com. Thank you for checking us out. And as always, keep it real, keep it teal, keep it real, Teal. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you after the next game.